Welcome to the second performance panel over in the Scrutiny meeting of this municipal year. Can I welcome to this meeting, and can I welcome Councillor Bradley, Councillor Howarth and Mark Lester, and our regular panel here. So I'm not going to read all this out because you've all heard it many times this year. If there is a fire alarm that goes off, we go out the way we came in, mobile phones off, and just stick your hand up if you want to speak. Okay? So if we can start the meeting by asking if there's any apologies.
I've received no apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Can we move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of July? Is that a true record of what went on? If you can cast your mind back before the summer holidays.
Can I move them, Chair?
Okay, thank you very much. Anything on the minutes that you want to make comments about? If not, we'll move on to declarations of any interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda. No? Okay. Can we move on to item 3 then, which is the performance focus of the Commercial and Property Directorate. Terry, are you?
Not on this occasion.
You're not. Is it you, Alistair?
Unfortunately, Chair, it is. Yes. So obviously, Terry's housing, I'm commercial and property. So Terry will pick up the housing stuff second.
Right, thank you.
So obviously, you've got a report in front of you. What's the best way of putting it? A challenging time in the property and commercial world at the moment, mainly because of external factors. And I think the primary thing there, you can see that there's a few, 5, I think, red projects, 4 amber projects and a number of green projects, and we'll come to them in a minute. And the nature of what we do in property, and particularly the development side as well, and the interaction with external parties creates some of those red and amber results, although some are obviously to do with some of the way that it was working in our own setup as well. The first symptom, if you like, of some of those problems is probably in the financial position in the paper, which is concerning when you look at an overspend of 165% in any organisation. A little bit, Chair, just to explain some of the numbers. They are explained in paragraphs 11 to 15, but the single biggest, or one of the single biggest variances is obviously the staffing budget, which has gone up significantly. That's because of the pay award, partly, that's gone to all staff, council staff, and we're seeing that across the entire council. It's costing the entire council hundreds of thousands of pounds. And it's costing all councils in Lancashire. Similar, been a meeting today where we've been discussing it with other council leaders. So at the moment, that's over budget. Also, because we've had a number of interim roles in the departments, some because there is a shortage of these kind of people, so building surveyors, etc., are in very short supply. They move around a lot at the moment, and they are charging more money. And therefore, the cost of those individuals are going up, but also the cost of interims when they leave. There's also been 2 staff members in this period on extended sick leave, or care leave, because one's partner had a very bad accident and therefore they had to go on leave for caring duties. You can't deny somebody that, but you have to get a replacement person in to do that role. So staffing is a major overspend. I think if we were doing the budget again, Mark, it would change dramatically because you'd put a lot more cover in to cover that staffing change. The other major change is the loss of income from Tatton development because of the delays at Tatton. Members of the holding on company working group who were at the meeting of the week will have heard the reasons for that, which I won't go into any great detail on, but the primary reason for the delay is the fire that happened, that when the fire brigade put the fire out, put damp into the building, created a fungal contamination of the plasterboard that was already up, and to deal with that, basically there's had to be a whole programme of decontamination of those fungal spores, because the worst thing that can happen is that we have to go in after all the rooms are finished and decorated and somebody's living in there and start dealing with that to refurbish a problem that we knew was there. So what the contractor did with their insurance company, has done a complete deep clean of the entire system and replacement of a lot of sections in order to ensure that doesn't happen. Nobody can guarantee it, but they've done everything they possibly can to guarantee it, and therefore that's led to an overall delay in the scheme, which means we haven't had the rent coming in, and therefore that isn't really a cost; it's a loss of rental opportunity. So, what you haven't ever had, you can't lose, but it's money that was built into the budget coming back in on some of those elements. There was also a couple of other change around, so the level of car parking income is down, primarily because we've maintained some of the COVID changes we brought in around COVID parking, where we reduced prices, and therefore that hasn't been fully re-implemented. But you'll be aware, members will be aware, we've recently discussed about the car parking strategy that will be brought in from the end of this year, and that will put things back more to normal, so that will cover that one off. The market rentals, the covered market particularly, and refurbishment costs, we started doing the 1498 area in the market, which was the food and drink area. That has been paused slightly, partly because of COVID and because of the wishes of the traders, because the traders in the rest of the market said, look, we've just come back from COVID, we've had our takings gone down, please don't just go and start doing a load more work and disrupt us again. We want to recover some of the money we lost through COVID. So we listened to that, and therefore we paused. We've also, as you'd be aware, many of you, Bee's Kitchen have moving to the Primrose Gardens. They were a pivotal part of that area. Obviously, the opportunity came up for them to shift. They wanted to do that. We wish them every luck with doing that, but that's then changed the thinking around that area, because it allows us not to have to move the bob in. It allows us not to do this, that, and the other, and it's all sequential, the works. So some of the units have already been done up. The other ones were paused while we got to a conclusion with Bees, and now we're back to progressing that area at a point when the traders are happy to do it. And that time typically would be not now, because they've got Chorley Live coming up, so the level of work will be done for Chorley Live. A level of work will be done in the run to Christmas, i.e. to get it to a stage, but the bulk of the work now will probably go into next year, because the best time to do work on the market is between Christmas and Easter, because that's the quietest time on the market, middle of winter, and the lowest trading times for that. So we have to take the traders with them, because what we can't do is just do it when it suits us. It's got to suit them as well. So they're the primary reasons for that budget variance, and therefore I think you can see, while there has been an overspend, particularly on wages and staff costs, most of the other ones, if you like, are either necessary evils or are lots of opportunity, and therefore not quite as bad as it looks on the surface. But to quote Peter Wilson, Asim Khan and various others, we've always been a high spending department because we do things, and if you do things, it's hard to cut costs, you usually end up spending more. Just watch changing rooms or whatever, the location or whatever. When you do a project, it always costs more than you think. To go on to the actual property projects and the scores and the measures and the dashboard there. The primary problem, I mean, the top one, percentage of reactive repairs logged and issued, 1% out off target. It's better than last year's quarter, so I'm okay with that one. It is, we're just about on target. The next one down, which is a negative repair jobs, reactive repair jobs inspected post-completion, that's inspection work. We've been short of surveyors, we've been short of building surveyors, so what we focused those people we did have on was the work to get work done, not to go and inspect it after it's been done. So that's a symptom of the shortage of those staff in that quarter. The staff have now been brought in to replace those, so that will bounce back to near target or on target by the next quarter, because we can now got the staff to actually do those reactive repair job inspections. So if you're short of the staff to do the main jobs, what you cut back on is the checks, if you like, as opposed to the actual pre-work that needs doing, because that's more important. The land ownership inquiries, again, as it says in the paperwork, is a symptom of a staff shortage on that area. But at the end of the day, that's an inquiry about land ownership being responded to in 3 days. That, to me, is not a business critical measure. It's an add-on service, and therefore, if it takes over 3 days to get your confirmation of who owns land, it's behind target, but it's not one of those things that we should really focus on. So there are other areas of focus at that point in time. The average time to issue a letter is better, although it's worse than the Q1 last year. But again, we're way above the target on that one. And then the other two there, community centre occupation and the office voids at the digital office park, are better than target. On the next page, rent collected in the digital office park is slightly behind, and I think it documents that we've had, again, staffing shortages in the debt recovery team, which isn't in this portfolio team. It's in Councillor Wilson's, I think, is in debt recovery because it's part of the accounts function, although it's not a mile off target. And again, we were giving some flexibility to people around post-COVID, not penalising them and chasing them too heavily for debt. What we agreed was a ratcheting effect, whereby people got back into a normal business and they had time to pay rather than just driving them to the wall when they've had a difficult period anyway. The daily site inspections for new developments is slightly below target, going back to what I said before about the ability of inspections from surveyors, etc. So that's not a mile off target. Planned preventive maintenance, again, similar, slightly behind target and worse than Q1 last year. That one is of concern, but I'm reassured that that's going to be picking up moving forward because additional resources have been brought into that area. And that's again a symptom perhaps of people focusing on dealing with problems as opposed to preventative maintenance, which is usually a secondary function. And then the income generated from meeting rooms and training facilities at Strawberry Fields, that figure I think, Mark, is incorrect. I think it's actually better than that.
Yeah, it's because we only started recording it partway through the quarter, so a full quarter's performance would be higher than that. And
would be above target then, so that's because it's a part quarter, yeah. The next page on town centre and markets, do you want to do questions on that section first, Chair, or do you want to carry on?
Continue.
Continue,
please.
Right,
yes.
I will continue.
Yeah. We'll come back to all those.
I'm sure you will, Chair. Market walk footfall, that number is a cumulative number, so that's for the whole year, 1.75 million. So obviously we have to go through to get to that number through the whole period. So it's a bit like your totaliser, your Blue Peter totaliser. So that's moving up towards the target, and as it says, it's better than Q1. So while it's red, it's not as red as it could be. So we will, as we're coming back post-COVID, you're seeing footfall increase, and we're getting back to a level of normalcy, so that will develop further over as the year progresses. The town centre vacancy rate, some of that is beyond our control. Other towns are far worse. We are recovering better post-COVID than most other towns, and it's not just us saying that. It is actually some of the business sector people who were saying that, and I was in a meeting the other day with developers and construction people from across Lancashire, and they were saying Chorley's town centre is very vibrant, and because estate agents and people, the likes of Gilks and that were there, and they said compared to other towns, Chorley is bucking the trend slightly. So I would expect that to drop in due course. But the frustration there, Chair, is that as one place opens, another one closes. So Dorothy Perkins is coming back into some kind of use, as is the old Greenwood shop, but then Outdoor World is closing, although it's owned by another town centre operator, and it's all wheels within wheels, so it may well open as something else very shortly. But it's an infuriating game. It's measuring town centre vacancy rate because you're at the behest of the market a little bit. Voids on the covered market refers back to what I was discussing before. We deliberately kept some voids so we could move people around from place to place to place. So the 7.5% is a normal working operation target. We are currently keeping voids so we could move people out of one unit to another, while we temporarily did up another unit for them to move into permanently, and that was why the number's higher there. So, but it has gone up generally in terms of the overall compared to last year, which was obviously a COVID-affected year. Percentage of rents collected is a concern, but again, going back to the Strawberry Fields discussion, we haven't been pursuing rent massively because we want to give people the breathing space to recover from COVID, and also we've had this issue about rent collection in the accounts department. We are now focusing more on that, and our policy starts to kick in, so we will look for backdated rent, and if some people don't want to pay backdated rent, they will be vacating the market at some stage. That's a difficult conversation to have when people have been through a very bad time, but that's where we're getting towards at the moment. Voids on the market walk is better than target, so I'll gloss over that, and it's just about full, because we're trying to squeeze people in for things like, you know, poppy shops and all that kind of stuff, and there's no space for them, so that's a symptom of success in my view. Rent collected in Market Walk is ditto, because we've not been doing that, but there's also the fact that it's refers to in paragraph, whatever it is, 26 I think it is, where there's a number of rent renewals coming up. It's traditional in the retail industry not to pay your rent for the last few months as a bit of a motivator for your landlord to do a better deal for you, and then you catch it up as part of the deal at the end, and you save it up for as a bargaining chip. That's what's happening here, so I expect that to correct itself as well. So there's a bit of two things going on there, but that is certainly part of the issue why that's below target. The coach visits is dropped off, obviously, through COVID to nothing and wasn't happening. It's coming back better than, and the town team said this at the last meeting, the town team, that they were happy that it was coming back quicker than they thought it would, and coach operators are actively coming, so that's actually above what their expectation was, and that's why it says they're better than Q1 2021-22, so it's on the right trajectory. My only caveat is, Chair, is I hope that number doesn't include football coaches, because if it does, I'll be very disappointed, Mark. It should just be shoppers coaches, not football coaches. That's a wholly different issue to talk about. The response rate for CCTV requests obviously is better than target, so I'll move on from that one. And combined car park ticket sales is what we said before about the fact that we haven't reverted back from post-COVID yet, but we are doing under the new parking strategy, so I'd expect that to come back in line, although obviously it's better than last year, because last year was the COVID time when it was a very different world. So really, Chair, I think for a mix of numbers, not as much green as Terry's going to show you in a minute, but most of it's got good reasons as to why. So happy to take questions either before Terry goes through.
Yes. Okay. Any questions? I can't see. Yes.
Yes, so you alluded to on the coach visits, shoppers and footballers. Can we have a breakdown of that? Is it purely shoppers, or is it football included as well?
That's shoppers coaches.
It's shoppers coaches. They book in advance and for parking, etc., etc. Just on that, just picking up on Alistair's point. Obviously, there's the post-COVID recovery. Andrew Daniels' team run campaigns to encourage coach visits. And in the quarter here, they've been a bit preoccupied because of the events that were coming up and the reopening of Astley Hall, etc., etc. But they have actually undertaken activity to encourage coach visits, including the production of a Charlie Markets promotional video, some adverts placed in Northern Life magazine, Charlie Flower Show programme. They've got some work that they're going to be doing, including a stand that's booked at the 2023 tourism exhibition as well, and various other activities. So we're not just sitting back and waiting for COVID to, run its way through, and we are actively promoting to get that number back up.
And I think what's good is that there's some different operators than have been in the town previously, because I think COVID changed the pay people, so they stopped doing what they were doing there, they restarted and they've looked to change the programme slightly, which is good. So hopefully it's a sign of things to come. And it's a sign of Charlie's vibrant town centre. We've got something to offer when they come here, whereas they're going to some town centres and they're emptying.
Any further questions? Yes, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've actually got a few questions, so if you're happy, I'll do two at a time, and then if anyone else wants to follow up. So the first one, pages 11 to 12, I think you've sort of answered it there, Alistair, about the two new surveyors in post, because the report says they should be in post by September. So they're definitely in post now, and they're going to go. We're confident that they're happy to address this issue with the reactive repair job inspections, which is obviously very important. The second one was about just more of a comment about the digital office park. I mean, I think the report's quite good, even though the indicators seem red at the face of it when you look at the trends. We're basically doubling on all of the trends compared to Q1 of last year, and that just shows what the COVID bounce back is. And I think, I'd expect from that quarterly increase in the rents from the digital office park, because more people are going to get into the office post-COVID, hopefully. And so I think that's nothing to be concerned about, but perhaps if you've got anything on that about the new surveyors and what impact they're going to have. Thank you.
And happy for Mark to assist, but yeah, they are in post. I had the conversation with Mark earlier about whether they're going to stay in post, because the problem is it's a revolving door with these people at the moment, because it's very hard to retain staff. And I was at a meeting today and Wire Council said they can't get building surveyors for love and the money, and they actually said they were asking about our shared services arrangement, because they said it must be easier for you to attract people, because the very reasons we did shared services was partly to be a bigger entity so we can pay more, give people bigger work experience and what have you. So it was reassuring for them to say that they were having real problems, even though, sharing a problem, but also that they recognised that was part of one of the benefits of shared working with South Ribble. So yes, they are in post now, and they are catching up on some backlogs. So one of the backlogs, I think, in Terry's report on the Primrose Gardens, there's catch up there on some of the work that's been outstanding there. So that's good. The other one about the digital office park, yeah, it must be busy, because we had this meeting with the developers forum on the development round table on Tuesday, and they crammed about 20 of us into one of the smallest meeting rooms there. Now, that was a symptom to me of everywhere else being busy and taken up, because normally we'd be given the biggest room then somewhere. So, it was a sign that it's busy, and it was noticeably. You could struggling for a car parking space. You were seeing lots of people walking past the building, going to the butty vans parked outside. So it's a sign that it's back to being busy, and you only have to look at the people walking in and out to know that it's a digital office park. Let's put it that way. It was very hip kind of workforce. It wasn't the usual. So it was an interesting experience to go down there and see it in real life. And we've had some change arounds on, because we've had somebody going on maternity leave. The lady who runs the place, the manages the place, is on maternity leave at the moment. So we've had to, change the staff at the front desk and what have you. But it all worked quite efficiently, which was again reassuring. When you go there, it's a bit like the owner. It's a bit like showing people your house in it.
Good. Any further questions? Yes.
Yeah, thanks for that. So on the market walk, again, very similar to the digital office park, like the footfall is increasing it's doubling in the space of a year, but also here we're almost a victim of our own success, that the council successfully invested in areas outside what we'd call the typical town centre. If you think about the new developments we've had on Preston Road, there's a new hub of development there, the upcoming development at Alca Lane, and several other areas outside of the town centre directly. Those places are getting increasingly busy as well. So almost these figures can be a bit elliptical, that the footfall isn't increasing as much as we would, but if you look at Chorley on any given day, it's just a hive of activity. I mean, just anecdotally, on the bank holiday, the new Starbucks that we have on the A6, I couldn't get a space. It was just so full. And that's, I think thinking about what the offer Chorley has for people coming in, all of these things are part of it on the way into Chorley. I think you've sort of answered my question that I was going to raise about the covered market renovation. My only comment on that is there anything the council could do more for what I'd call artisanal groups, the sort of pop-up shops that you get, whether it's like the ones, homespun crafts during COVID, home bakeries, that sort of type. You find it particularly in cities, they're quite good at allocating space in their covered markets to, let's say, for 1 week of a month to these businesses, and they come along with their contactless readers, and it's really a boon for them. So if we've got space to potentially accommodate something like that, I think it'd be fruitful. On the parking tickets, I think it's just really important to look at the contactless options for people to pay. As far as I know, it's currently just cash. Other towns across Lancashire and the northwest, not only will they have contactless readers increasingly, but also things like Ringo, where you can just sort of, if you've got an account, you just text and do a quick 10-second call, and you've done your parking for that morning. But also, if you look at, for instance, the Bolton covered market, they're really quite good. You tap in, you pay £1.50, whatever it is. But of course, that's going to add up for every person that comes in. And if people are wanting to use just the 3 hours free parking, that's almost £1 that they would have happily paid that we've lost out on. So I'd really encourage us to look at contactless parking. And lastly, just on the coach visits, I might be a sign of my youth and naivety, but I think coaches are a bit of an odd one to look at. And actually, You know, it's good that they're certainly increasing. I wouldn't have thought most people came to Chorley on a coach. And, you know, I think what we'd want to look at is for rail services, for instance, into Chorley from, whether it's from Preston or from Bolton or from the outlying villages, if that, you know, if we can lobby for those kind of services to be improved, I think that's a more efficient way for people to come into the town centre, and looking at the offer we have around the train station as soon as you come out, particularly with the new developments we've had, whether it's the entertainment complex, the cinema, that to me would be a sign of real progress in Chorley, and I think it's something we're doing well on. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Any further questions?
Could I comment on a couple of those things, Chair? Could I comment on a couple of those
Yes,
things,
yes.
just to help out? I'll leave the contactless payments with Mark. I agree with you, but there are logistical issues with that, which we are looking at, but a little bit difficult to overcome, but I'll let Mark talk about that one because it's difficult. The pop-up thing, yes, there is. We looked at a couple of artisanal market kind of things. One was an operator from another town not that far away who came and looked to do it. When we actually got behind the scenes, it was more of a sort of trinkets and whatever. It was a bit down market, so we shied away from it, and we were hearing bad things about it, so we did our due diligence, and we thought, no, wasn't what we wanted to keep the quality up. It's finding the right operators, and also we have an issue a little bit with our common market is very popular and very full, but then the traders want some kind of exclusivity on it and don't want people doing pop-ups in between because they keep a lot of their gear there and what have you. So there's a bit of a trade-off between keeping your usual people happy and doing that. I think there are spaces, though, we can use more for pop-ups. So one of the units in Market Walk we're deliberately keeping empty for pop-ups, what's coming back in before Christmas, which was an operator from Wealton, Withnell, that area, who basically collects businesses together and does some of that kind of operation, which is what we probably prefer a little bit, because it's not doing direct trading competition with our market traders. But it's something I think we'll increasingly see in some of the vacant larger units in the town centre, which at the moment are too big for us to directly intervene in, but that might be the kind of operation they go to. The reason that coaches has been counted historically, James, is because that's what the traders like, because they see a big influx of people. But I agree with you on the buses and the trains and the connectivity, particularly the trains at the minute, because of the problems around the rail industry. We are seeing a bit of a problem there. But what we're also doing is seeing a different kind of visitor to Chorley in the day and in the evening because of the microbars and all that. And I don't know if anybody was at the last town team meeting. I think Julia was actually present when Steve Williams went through. We've got some very sophisticated software now that tracks people's phones a little bit, doesn't it?
Well, more than a little bit.
All right, it tracks the phones quite a lot, so it can tell, because you've got all your apps on and what have you, and it says where you're from and where you come from and that, and they also do some questionnaires and stuff, but it's actually saying not just who's coming and how many, but where they're coming from, where else they normally go to, how long they're spending in the town, what the dwell time is, what shops they're visiting, all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit interactive. It's all kosher, but the data that came out of it was shared afterwards with the traders, and they sort of really dug into it. So it was good information, because it also shows the impact of campaigns you might do on Rock FM or advertising in different places and what impact that has. And not surprisingly, it shows the bulk of our people come from around Chorley, but surprising numbers are coming from Wigan and Bolton, because those are some of the towns that are going a little bit, and they're going Chorley's like Bolton used to be when questioned about why they're coming to Chorley. So it's good for the traders as well, because it shows the impact of some of the stuff that we're doing. So I think that, Chair, is something we could work a bit smarter.
Yeah. I mean, probably before COVID, Thursday was a day when odd people came and had stalls for selling the knitted stuff or gardening stuff and things like that. Does that still happen?
On the market, no, because we haven't got the space, to be quite honest. So what we're trying to do is trying to focus that on more the outdoor market stalls and having themed days or theme events and stuff, or trying to get them to take, like I said, a unit and then putting them into that, or putting them in touch with people who are doing these pop-up things around town. But it's something I think we could do more of, and we're trying to find, but it's working with the right operators because we want the right operators. We don't want to destabilise what is reasonably vibrant town centre, so we need to do it gently and carefully, and that's why we looked at this. People do. So we're going to create the space for these people to come and do it, to give a bit of an option and a bit of difference. But what we didn't want them to do is that to not be quite what it was said on the tin, and then give them a lease or an arrangement, and then depart from that. Is that right? That's probably the best way of putting it, isn't it? Okay.
Okay, yeah, Sarah.
Thanks, Chair. It's more just a suggestion, really. I know it tends to be Tuesday when you get coach parties flocking into Chorley. The market tends to be more older people. And what I've seen in a lot of towns, to get people in, sometimes they'll have like a tote bag or something with Chorley Market logo on, or like choose Chorley, and then just some leaflets in the bag there, maybe just to try and encourage people that they can pass on to family members. Just one suggestion.
Agree. That's probably more the comms and events team to do that, but we'll make a note of it and we'll have a word, because yes, particularly those kind of bags where then people walk around other towns with a Choose Jolly bag. Yeah. Spot on that. Perfect advertising for me. Go wherever they want then, can't they?
Yes, Roy.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Regarding the footfall, the £1.75 million visitors, obviously that's based on a percentage for quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four. Now, do we have a detail of what quarter one was expected to be?
Yeah, I don't think it's any more sophisticated than equally dividing 1.75 by 4.
Well, in which case,
It's a cumulative figure.
why the footfall is 528? Why is it showing red?
It's like I said, it's the way it's measured. So that's for the year.
Yeah, that's
Until
what I'm saying.
until you achieve that, you're behind target, right?
4 times $500,000 is 2 million.
I agree, Roy.
We agree.
So I'm just saying, why is it red?
We agree. But it's not. It should be per quarter measure. It's not. It's a totalizer measure.
Yeah.
So we're so far up towards our target, but yes, we're ahead of the target.
So it
towards
should be
we climb
green.
to
Is
it.
that what you're
It
saying?
should be green, and I'm look behind me, and they can pass it back to Vicky and have that challenge.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
I've just got a couple of questions, basically general really. All the red emblems that are showing, one of the main reasons why they are red is lack of staff or staff illnesses and what have you. And it was in the previous performance plan when we had Adrian Lowe here, he was saying when some of the performances were, it was due to lack of staff. Over the last 2 years, have we lost a lot of staff, or is it because we're busier, we need more staff?
Right. Yeah, can I have a more? Yeah, I'll give you the honest answer. Right. So there's a number of things going on. It's not just one thing. I think what we failed to do potentially is keep up our core staff complement with that just how many buildings we've got. So we keep building stuff, and we've not necessarily created new permanent posts to maintain those buildings or let those buildings. So that's one of the reasons we're lagging slightly behind. What we've done as a result of that is had temporary posts in some instances. So we've created temporary posts rather than permanent posts. And because of the other reason being the kind of industry competition, you can't get building surveyors for love the money, you can't get state surveyors for love the money. We pay more to them, and it's a vicious cycle because we go through an agency and we get a posting, the agency gets their commission, and we pay an hourly rate to the agency. That's not the hourly rate that the staff get, so it looks like they're being paid fortunes, but they're not, unfortunately. Then what happens is the authority or organisation down the road, they've got a staff shortage as well, and there's not enough staff to go around. So they advertise a post, and the people who work for us, some of them, not all of them, will go, well, I can earn an extra £5 an hour down the road. And the agency obviously encourages this because they get another commission from the organisation down the road. And I've been doing quite a lot of interviewing recently for posts, And you can see this whereby what they're doing is they're taking the individual's current hourly rate or day rate and just adding a percentage to it. So when I say how much is this person going to cost, you can guarantee it's 10 or 20% more than the last one. And it's self-perpetuating. The agencies are driving the cost inflation as much as the staff shortage, the industry-wide staff shortage. Alistair alluded to it before, but we're hoping that shared services is going to help us out with this, because we've started this process and we've gone through the scoping exercise, and effectively the outcome of the scoping exercise at the moment is that the bit that we're going to concentrate on is estates and property, where we've got the biggest problem in terms of staff resources. And that's about building capacity, building resilience, getting to the stage whereby on a shared basis we can create permanent full-time posts where these individuals who are currently on agency might go, well, do you know what? It's not as much as I'm getting through the agency, but what I am getting is the security of a job. I'm getting a pension. I'm getting all of those benefits that you get through working for in local government. So that's one of the things we're hoping to resolve. In terms of your question about enough capacity, I think there's going to be a fine balance that we need to achieve through that shared services process in making sure that we build enough capacity within the teams for the two authorities, because we're not the only ones that are building stuff, and down the road at South Ribble, they're building stuff as well. So it's not just about capacity for now, it's about capacity for the future as well. So we're going to have to try and get that right.
I mean, you mentioned surveyors. I mean, do you go to South Ribble and say, look, we've a big project here, can we borrow one of your surveyors? Does that happen?
We're already working together on an informal basis on two levels. One is on the major projects, which is, it's informal, i.e. it's not permanent shared services, but it has been agreed by the councils. We're also working very informally on the estates and property side of things in a number of ways. I'll give you an example. We have a surveyor that acts as a clerk of works for us in Chorley. They've got a dig going on to lay some cable on a new development in South Ribble. So we're going to charge that person's time to the project in South Ribble to go and act as clerk of works and watch BT's civils contractor dig a hole and make sure they're digging it correctly. So we're doing stuff like that. We're also very informally, the nature of the problems that we've got in Chorley in relation to estates and property are not really very different than the nature of the problems that we've got in South Ribble as well. So in advance of the formal process to conclude the shared services arrangement, I've already brought together both of the teams to work jointly on certain things. So if there are policies and procedures that need updating or need writing, rather than both authorities write their own policies and procedures, we're getting them together to do it once, because they should be virtually identical, albeit they have a different council's name on them. Similarly, one of the big barriers we've got at both authorities at the moment is the lack of a suitable platform that acts as a database for managing our assets. And we are implementing something called Technology Forge, hopefully, for both authorities. So we're working jointly on that in terms of gearing up for that, because ultimately it will be the same platform under the shared services arrangement. Both sets of data will go in there, albeit in different compartments. So we are working together.
Just on that, to put a point, one of the property team have been asking for that software for a long time. Maybe IT weren't quite as receptive. They were trying to make them use other software, like IT departments do, but then it's been proven that they're better off using this stuff. They'll do a better job. So again, that's one of Mark's frustrations, because we're trying to keep to an IT line. But again, that's just big organisations. You always have to deal with IT, don't you? The second thing on the staffing issue, it's a problem through every council. Again, I sat at Lancashire Leaders today. At the last meeting, we discussed joint recruitment and schemes to retain staff. We discussed it again today, and there's papers coming forward. There's a meeting on the 4th of October of lots of chief execs, because what we're looking to do is actually get more people trained up to come into the business, because none of us have got enough staff in many departments. Property and estates is the worst one, probably for most councils, but lots of other departments are short as well. So I sat in a room with all the other Lancashire leaders, at which point the leader of South Ribble Valley said, we had a really good planning officer, because this merry-go-round, this revolving door, planning officer, we sent them to college, whatever, got them trained up and what have you, and they've just gone to Pendle. and the leader of Pendley sat 2 seats down. Tad embarrassing, but that's the way of the world at the moment. They're just going from place to place. Now, I don't blame the staff like footballers. They'll go where they're paying the most money. But what you then getting is wage inflation. That's coming to our costs, which then ultimately will go to the council taxpayers. But what we need is, and I think this is a symptom, Chair, of 2 things. Partly Brexit, and that was identified today as well, because there were a number of staff that used to work in councils who went back to the continent after Brexit, and also COVID, because a lot of people looked at the way their lives were and chose to take a different career path, so they took redundancy or left and changed their lifestyles through COVID. And at the same time, everybody's busy, so therefore it's a bit of a perfect storm. So we can't solve this on our own. What we need to do is to be training more council officers and particularly these technical people in the pool in Lancashire. A number will go into private industry, we have to accept that. But again, it was interesting on Tuesday when I was with these private construction companies and what have you, they've got exactly the same problems. So at the same table was Runshire College, because they've had conversations before now with Runshire College and with UCLan about can they do specific courses for planning kind of people who are used in the private sector and the public sector, or for building surveyors, because they're used in both sectors. So it's across industry, it's certainly across councils, and there is no easy answer. There's a short-term answer, but there needs to be a medium and a long-term answer, and Lancashire will be sitting down to do it. Gary Hall sat next to me saying start our own agency, because if we had our own agency, we could look to control some of that and allocate staff between ourselves. So we're getting away from property now, but that's the real story.
I mean, as regards training young people, do you go into universities? Because all universities churn out surveyors every year or planning graduates and what have you. Do you go and try and see them before they think of getting a job and put forward to the council?
It's a really well-timed question. I'm really glad you asked it. We've just had graduates start with us. So we did this issue that we're facing has been going on for a period of time, and we've not just sat back and done nothing about it. So Alistair alluded to the staff absences you've got at the moment. One of them is maternity leave. That was a junior member of staff who we've sent to university to a postgrad and become qualified and chartered as a surveyor. So we did start this process some time ago. More latterly, in the past 2 weeks, we've had 2 graduates start within the team as well. One specific to us and one as part of the wider corporate graduate recruitment programme. One of them is working within the estates team, and the other one is currently working on the property side of things. So we started the process. We need to do more of it, because, being completely honest, if you actually look at the age dynamic of the staff team as well, we've very much got 2 extremes at the moment. So we've got these very junior members of staff that we're just starting, and we've got people who are perhaps... I'm a young buck compared to some of the estates team, believe me. We've got some staff members who are perhaps towards the end of their career as well. So we've got some succession issues. In addition to all of the market pressures, we've got some immediate succession issues as well that we need to deal with. And that's part of the driver for shared services again. If we can create the permanent post, if we can make them attractive. And it might be the case that we go out to recruit and we fail, and we have to pay market supplements to be competitive in the marketplace. That might be the outcome.
Okay, thank you for that. Just 2 more questions. You mentioned Tatton. It's mentioned quite a lot in the papers here. Is there a date for it finishing or being completed, or is it still in the air and still problems?
There are phases. There's a phase completion. So some of the phase completions will be done at the end of October. Some of the phase completions will be towards Christmas, and some will be into the new year. And for the different parts, because obviously we've got flats and care facility, we've got the nursery to move back in, we've got the chemists and all the rest of it, and the doctor's surgeries. Some of that is still up in the air, and again, the wholly owned company to be discussed about that, because we want guarantees about the programme. We don't want any more slippage on the programme. So what we're going to try and do is, and what we'd also are conscious of, and Councillor Nevitt sat in the room, so I've got to say this, is that residents have been having to put up with the parking issues around there, the disruptions to their lives. They want it finishing like tomorrow. But what we can not want to do is then have people moving in right as the work's finishing and have double the congestion and the problems that they've got up there. So what we'd rather do is, get the works finished and then put people in and maybe take a bit longer to do that. So it's about getting the right kind of completion and not just rushing to an end, but the major disruption needs to come to an end as soon as possible. So yes, at the moment, touch wood, Terry said before, it's quite exciting, it's going to be opening. I said it'd be more like a blessed relief because we just want to see it finished and done, which is where you get to on these kind of large projects. You get to the stage where you just want to get it finished. That's what we're working towards. And I'm optimistic and confident, although you're waiting to see what could go wrong still. But every day is a step towards that completion, and we are generally on target now for the current phased completions through to next year.
And are the builders or developers, whatever they call them, are they coming back to you all the time wanting more money?
Yes, because that again happens, and
Yeah.
there has been delays. Now the delays were down to them, but there are then other things that where any contract, there's always opportunity to both reduce costs by penalising the contractor and for the contractor to make claims. We're in that, putting everything on the table stage at the minute. Hopefully we can get around the table and agree where they're going to get to for the end. It is going to go, and again that went to the wholly owned company, I'm not going to beat around the bush, it's going to go over the budget by an amount. But again, some of that's just purely because additional works that are required as we're going along are costing more because construction costs are probably nearly doubled, a lot of them, in the last 2 years. So therefore, we're in a wholly different world, mainly because of energy. So anything that involves energy, cement and all the rest of it is costing an awful lot more money. So therefore, we are subject to cost inflation. But having said that, the rentals on the units will be more. The world is costing more money. So it's the way of the world.
Okay, thank you.
We sorry, just to add to that, Chair, we're between a rock and a hard place when you get to this stage in the scheme as well, because we all want it to finish. The contractor wants it to finish because in their minds we're eating into profits, their profits, the longer it goes on. But it's these final stages of the work, which are the finishes, that if we don't get right, it's really, really noticeable. And everybody says, well, it's not very good, is it? So as much as, we all want to get it finished, at the same time, there's a balance to be achieved between holding the contractor to account, not letting them cut corners, and not letting them do shoddy work on the finishes. So it's a difficult one. It's not an unusual situation at this stage in the build either.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. I've just one more question on this before I bring Councillor Howard in. The item there about community centres where it's 50% capacity. I'm very surprised really, because in Whittle is fully booked 7 days a week, and that's privately run by a committee from Whittle residents. And I just wondered, are we putting enough pressure, or do people know in the area that they can hire the rooms out, etc., or is it just, I don't know really, why it's not more than 50%?
We all know, Chair, that Whittle is special, and let's just leave it at that. No, in seriousness, it's a COVID thing. So a lot of groups through COVID have stopped functioning. They are getting back together now and restarting, and they are starting to come back together, and that's probably more a symptom. This is Q1, so this is when people were starting to emerge. Again, what we've tried not to do, when people have had long-standing bookings and they've gone away for COVID, particularly older groups, some of those people haven't wanted to come straight back out into the wider world and meet in person, etc. So what we're trying to do is give them the space to come back at their own time and not push them and take that space up with others. But as time moves on, we will look to fill that space with other people. So I think that's more a symptom of the time period, and we will start to push. But also, some community centres we specifically keep space free so we can put events on and what have you, because we don't want it booked out 100%, because then we can't do anything that's not, if you've got 100% usage, you've got no flexibility to do community events and all the rest of it. So again, it's a symptom of the world getting back to normal in my view. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, any further questions for Alistair? Yes, Michelle. Sorry, it's my eyesight. Can't see very well.
Just a quick one on page 13, the percentage voids on the market walk. That trend, I think it's supposed to be green, isn't it? Doing better than last quarter. Quarter one.
Yeah, which I think is showing in the green starred one, AJ.
No, the trend next to it.
Yeah.
It's better than quarter one. It should be red at the minute.
It's the colour of the text. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Well spotted. That's the June Molyneux Award for.
Okay. Yes.
You alluded to a a more formal footing for shared services. I think going forward we do need to have it on a more formal. I just wondered, when are we likely to get a more formal footing, please?
In relation to the estates and property teams, the target is that it will be resolved by January.
I think you voted for it at the last council meeting that we're going to do it. So it's going to be done by January, is it?
Signed off by January, with recruitment starting from that point onwards, yeah. That's the timetable.
Okay? Right. If any more questions for Alistair? If not, Terry, can you give your comments about the accommodation in the area?
Thank you. If I could take you to agenda page 15, please, the chart. If we can actually go through it, a lot of green, a lot of positivity in this. And I think I've got to mention, as I'm relatively new to the job, I think the councillors who voted to actually go into this area over the last few years, namely supported housing of various types, plus the staff who actually got it underway, deserve a lot of credit. Because if we've got positive figures here, what it does illustrate overall is there was a genuine need for this type of accommodation and the backup facilities that are provided to people with various needs. If we just go through, obviously the greens are positive. Rent collected, voids, percentage rent collected at Primrose Gardens, percentage voids at Primrose Gardens are all well on target and have been accomplished with quite a lot of efficiency in essence. Where we get to the red part, I'm not going to start making excuses, but I think I can give you some reasonable reasons for them. Cotswold Conference Facilities. Essentially, that refers to a reasonably large room. But when COVID came along, when it was discovered that we got more rough sleepers than we wanted, it was decided that instead of having a staff room, which this room was, that it would actually be opened up and additional accommodation for people who were sleeping rough would be provided. So it ceased to actually have this function. I suppose where we could effectively have taken this out, because it isn't, in a sense, an accurate measure of what it was intended for eventually. The initial intention was to have conference facilities, training facilities for staff, other places that they could use, but in the end it was actually used because of the demand in the community for additional space. Primrose conference facilities, once again affected by COVID, and percentage of voids at Primrose turned around within 14 days. You can't get away from the COVID situation here. And also, what I think I should point out is that places in this type of accommodation don't come cheap. There's a lot of support involved. It's often depending on the residents obtaining housing benefit. That means they need to be carefully vetted so they don't end up in any financial trouble. So for it to go beyond 14 days, in my view anyway, is totally reasonable. And I don't think that's anything to worry about. Percentage rent collected in rented housing, those are the other properties that we've got in addition to Cotswold and Primrose, very high. Percentage voids in rented housing, I couldn't believe this figure, 0%. Effectively, that means people are just staying put, which I would also suggest reflects the demand in the community for quality rented accommodation provided by a good landlord, namely the council. So I think that's extremely telling. Percentage of voids in rented housing turned around in 14 days. Once again, 100%. So there is obviously demand out there for housing other than the demand that actually fills Cotswold and Primrose and will effectively fill Tatton eventually. Going over the page, if we may, page 16, 17. Tatton Gardens, I think that's actually been dealt with by quite a number of questions. It's gone into red, largely because of delays, largely because of the fire. I'm told, I wasn't involved myself, but quite a bit of activity between council officials, officers, and one or two of our executive in negotiating with the builders. But once again, I'm assured that we shall get it around December 2022, and I think that's a reasonable achievement considering what delays occurred earlier in the year. I'll leave it at that. If anybody has any questions.
No, everybody. I'll start with Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just regarding Primrose Conference facilities, what sort of users do you get using those facilities currently?
Yes, if you would.
It's a range of users. They tend to be more community focused, and they tend to be more local to the town centre as well. One thing I would say is that obviously that figure's also been affected by COVID, so it's one of those where we're building back up again. We've now let the cafe, and the cafe joins on to you're familiar with it, the cafe joins onto the conference room, and the idea always was that the cafe could offer catering to any events that are going on in there. So we're really hopeful now that the advent of the letting of the cafe is going to drive use of that room up as well, because we can provide on-site catering.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree. I think using the cafe is a good idea to promote it. Are we going to think about having anything else in there, like posters up or something around the area?
I think now we've got visitors be coming in for the cafe. I think it's a good idea. I'll pass it back to the team.
Are the caterers in the cafe capable of catering for larger numbers for conferences?
Yeah, the cafe operator is Bee's Country Kitchen. The kitchen is a quite large catering. I don't know if you've been in it. It's a very large catering kitchen, which is big enough to cater for the cafe itself and external functions. Right. The conference room itself isn't massive, so yeah, there's sufficient capacity.
Good. Okay. Yes, Michelle, is it? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. The percentage of voids, paragraph 31, the turnaround says 14 days, and it's to carry out refurbishment works to damaged properties. Do we recoup any money back from occupants for any damage that may have caused that you need to repair?
If I could pass that to Mark again, please.
It's the one about the
31.
comments about the voids. So when you turn around 14 days, it's because they have to do a survey of the previous tenants' dilapidations. Charging for the
if you look at the figures on turnovers, the general needs housing is all it doesn't turn over at the moment. Yeah, there's turnover of Primrose. Generally, when an apartment turns over at Primrose, unfortunately, it's because somebody's died. So we don't seek to recover anything in terms of dilapidations there. If there are damages at Cotswold, we do seek to recover. However, given the financial circumstances that the users of Cotswolds are generally in, it generally is a repayment plan, which is small payments, and we're not successful generally in recovering it, but it's not worth chasing, to be honest.
But to be fair, we built that in to the model when we did Primrose, and we will be doing the same at Tatton. The fact that it's sometimes a one-way trip through there, that, you know, we're not going to chase the family for touching up paint or whatever it might be, given the state they're in. So I think it's a reasonable, but that's why we put so much on the service charge. And I think Terry told that when he went through the last papers on that, on Tatton, with the service charges over-recover slightly to cover some of that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll speak to Tatton Gardens in a second, seeing as I'm, one of the ward councillors there. But just on the conference spaces first, personally, I'm not too surprised by the Cotswold conference one. If we think about the location of it, most people are not going to think about a social housing provider that's also used by the NHS as somewhere where they would go for conferences. So the fact that not many people are booking that, in fact 0% are booking it in the last quarter, 0% this time last year, doesn't strike me as too concerning. On the Primrose, though, which is obviously there is some interest, I was wondering, is there any scope for members to potentially have a look around it? Because what I've heard from community groups is that perhaps it doesn't quite fit the bill that they might have been looking for in a conference space. So I definitely agree with you about Bees Country Kitchen. In fact, they usually cater to big council events out in Astley Park and various council events, so they're more than capable of catering to any events there. But would it be possible for members to potentially review these facilities to see what's on offer? Because of course we can take that back to the community groups we're all part of and say there's an offer in Chorley Town Centre that's got decent parking available nearby. It's currently being underutilised. Thanks.
Chair finds that we love showing members around the facilities. There's an open invitation at any time, so if any member wants to look at the facilities, they can make contact with me or they make contact with Lorraine or any of the team, and we'll quite happily show you around the whole facility, particularly the conference facilities.
Yeah, just on Tatton Gardens, so like Alistair was saying at the beginning about the fire, what happened at the time was, in a context of the sort of crime that we're seeing in antisocial behaviour across Chorley Town Centre, which has got wider ramifications. There was no security on site at the time, so I'm pleased that since then, we've worked with the contractors, that's now remedied. Contractors proudly saying we've got 24/7 security on site, which I think is a vast improvement on that. Having toured these facilities, particularly looking at the show flat available, there's something on offer in Chorley that's never been there before. And I was quite struck when I went in, and I spoke to the officer there, the accommodation manager, who's currently at Primrose Gardens, and she was showing me the windows facing inwards, which might sound a bit odd for what you'd think of as a block of flats. Actually makes complete sense that we're going to be fostering a community here that really is going to be quite awe-inspiring, to be honest. It will bring something to Chorley that's not been there previously. And also, I was quite pleased to look at the rental agreements, that it's going to be on a similar basis to Primrose Gardens, and actually what on the face of it might seem quite a steep price, it's actually the market average nowadays, and for what people will be paying, they're going to get quite a lot of service in a top spec facility. So granted, there's been a lot of delays that have been outside of our control, but as Terry says, this is coming online on the accommodation side, December 2022 to January 2023, probably a good time people are setting up for a new year. I think there's a lot of promise in there, and I'll be working alongside my colleagues to work with the first residents there to foster that sense of community. But I definitely encourage members to visit, because what's on offer there is quite spectacular. So I'd like to thank all of the officers involved and all of the cabinet members for that. I think it's a really good investment. Thanks, Chair.
Alistair or Terry? I mean, the directorate seems to be going okay. Just one final question. What about the future? Have you got plenty of work pending, or is it coming back to finance, etc., etc.?
I think, Chair, we're quite fortunate a lot of our schemes have come to an end just as costs are spiralling and the world's a slightly more uncertain place, let's put it that way. And therefore, unlike our colleagues at South Ribble who've just started off on a lot of schemes, they've got a lot of stuff in flight. We've got to a natural pause point, and we always knew we were going to get to this natural pause point. So I think it's quite fortuitous, because I won't like to be exposed on lots of schemes with the cost spiralling and contractual issues going on and all the rest of it. So, I think we've been a little bit lucky that we've got a lot of our stuff done. but it doesn't deter you from wanting to do more. And then we always said in Chorley the developments will be for two purposes. One is to bring income into the council, but also usually for a dual purpose, whether that's jobs or care or doctors or whatever it might be. It has a secondary, or shops or the town centre. It's secondary purpose. And again, I was having that same conversation today because prior to our starting our Lancashire Leaders meeting, we were all sat around the table bemoaning the wage increase and the impact on the councils because it's costing us £300,000, it's costing, Ribble Valley, whoever's talking to, or filed X, and it's costing the county council hundreds of thousands of pounds. It's blown a right hole in their budget, and millions of pounds, a real big hole in their budget. And what I was saying was, because they were all saying about where they were getting money from, and and the reserves and pillaging your reserves. So some councils were saying they've been taking £500,000 out of reserves every year for the last 3 years. We haven't been doing that in Chorley because we've managed to keep our reserves at £4 million or whatever it is roughly, on the grounds that we've got other income streams, but we've got other income streams with other benefits for the town. So I think that we will maintain that trajectory of looking to invest where others don't, and for the right reasons, which give us A, an income, and B, a secondary benefit. So, but I'd like the market to stabilise a little bit first, because in times of uncertainty, you don't particularly, even we, John, won't, dive into far more risk. And you'll be delighted to hear this, given the way your group tends to deal with it, is we won't take on loads of risk at a time of uncertainty. You're better off seeing where the world goes. It will settle down. We'll get to a new normal. The war in Ukraine was a destabiliser. That's not going to carry on forever. Energy prices will come back to some kind of normality, and therefore then we will look to do other projects. But exactly what, where and when, we've lots of ideas. We've always lots of ideas, haven't we, Mark?
Good, good.
And then we expect Mark and them not to pick it up.
Look forward to receiving them or seeing them at council or at cabinet meetings in the future.
Housing chair, I suspect, will be a major investment there in the future, don't you, Terry?
Hopefully.
Very good, thank you very much. So, thank you for this section. If you want to stop, you can do, but if not, thank you very much for being here this evening, answering all the questions, and safe journey home.
Thank you, Chair.
So, next item is item 19, and the progress report on the business planning. And that's you, Anthony. I get it always wrong way around. Howard, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Don't worry, it's been a curse since birth that I'm often referred to as Anthony. So I'll answer to both most equally. Thank you very much to present the report.
Just before you start, don't mention Tatton.
We don't need to mention
Because it
Tatton.
comes quite a lot in the business plan as well, but I think we've covered Tatton all the way through, so just keep whipping around that.
Absolutely. I think there will be a number of things that have been covered in the previous item. Yeah. But overall, what I want to present this evening is the business plan update. So the business plan update sets out a little bit more around the granular detail of across the different services and directorates on what is being delivered. And generally, performance is really good at the moment. So we do have a total of 181 projects across all the different directorates and services. So not a small total. These do include the corporate strategy projects as well. And you can see that the majority are green. This delivery is in the first few months of those plans delivery as well. So the new plans were formally agreed in June. Some of those activities carry on. But obviously it is still early days in terms of the delivery of the projects. Just to make sure that members are aware, where a project is rated as not started, that means that it's just not programmed yet to start. So it will come online in either the next quarter or the quarter after that. Where projects are on hold, that means they've taken a decision at the moment just to take stock on whether that project moves forward or whether they need to realign some of the timescales, but they haven't effectively started it yet. So it just means that they're placing the project on hold at that time. All these projects are managed within a directorate level. So each directorate meets regularly, but we attend on a quarterly basis to get the updates on the delivery of the business plans, and they will sort of manage them themselves. So their determination determines whether they are green, on hold, red or amber. We have provided a general overview, and as you can see, most of the projects are rated green. Some are already completed. There are a number of red projects, but that actually relates to quite a number of the services that were just being discussed in terms of commercial and property. And again, some of that was all down to capacity issues, of which you'll have heard this evening that there has been recruitment. And in other areas of the organisation as well, significant recruitment within the ICT services and customer following the shared services reviews. So there has been that initial impact within the delivery of the business plans, where you'll have seen some move to amber, again, generally looking at capacity in terms of that, or prioritisation as projects move forward. So it's a fairly agile programme that is managed at the directorate level, and so that's broadly the key issues that we see when we're talking with the services. So they tend to look at those projects, reevaluate where they will deliver them within year, and sometimes some of them are carried over, but we're at the very early start of the delivery of this year's business plans.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm just one quick question before we ask questions. Where it says it's on hold, a project on hold, I mean, it started, but it's held up for various reasons, is it?
Effectively, yes. It's not being delivered, so they placed it on hold and they're going to wait until the appropriate time. So they'll make a determination as to whether the project goes ahead or not at that point.
Right.
So that's what it means when it's on hold. There's a question mark over whether the project will continue this year, and so those services will be re-evaluating that and looking a little bit more detail.
And presumably that's up to the cabinet members to decide whether to take it forward or wait.
Generally managed within directorates, so not all cabinet members will be involved in each of these projects. Right. There will be bigger projects, and they do vary in quite scale and size. Some are very discrete, small projects. Others are, big corporate strategy projects. So effectively, if they are corporate strategy projects, yes, that is going through the quarterly monitoring reports, it's going through to cabinet. These directorate reports, it will depend on what directors are taking. Some will be fairly administrative type projects. So you'll see things around some of the digitisation processes, what they're looking to improve as services. And they will have discussions with the portfolio members. But yes, the core management will be done at the directorate management level between the service leads or team managers.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Have we got any questions on? Yes, James.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. My concern is with the kind of projects we've got on hold, because I love to see a project that's green, it's on schedule. Amber's not too bad when it's fallen slightly off track. In this case, red isn't even too bad because it just means we're facing delays. But some of these projects that are on hold are quite serious ones. Starting with the first page of the commercial and property, I think it's on about the flood defence work to the River Chore, Astley Park. It's not too long ago that Southport Road was flooded, where we're looking at here particularly, and it's took a lot of time and a lot of effort, a lot of resources to remedy that. We're approaching what I'd call rainy season in the next month or so. I'd hate for that to happen again on such a busy thoroughfare. So I'd raise concern about that one being put on hold. The other projects I'd be concerned about being put on hold are in the public protection works, animal welfare, health and safety, food safety, electronical safety and hospitality settings. Now, as members and officers alike know, health and safety is one of my big bugbears, and to see 3 projects to do with health and safety that are delayed, and of course animal welfare, which I know members are quite passionate about, particularly on this side of the aisle. I'd quite like to see those put back on in priority, because there'll be, health and safety is one of these things. You never get a benefit out of the money until you need it, the amount of resources you put in. And, if it means you have to postpone a project you know, that's of less priority, so be it, because health and safety comes first, in my opinion. So, particularly food safety as well, very important when we're looking at opening of new businesses and relocation of cafes and the like. So, I'd like to see that potentially reviewed. I think it's important that health and safety comes first. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, it's a great pity that the Cabinet meeting last week was cancelled because this item was on the Cabinet papers, and you could have asked the Cabinet members why some of these projects are on hold anyway. But
It was cancelled because of unfortunate circumstances.
Oh, I don't dispute that. I'm not saying it should have been cancelled, but I say you will have probably more time to ask the questions to the Cabinet members to say why these things haven't been progressed really.
As Howard pointed out, obviously a lot of these decisions are taken at the directorate level. So it's, while we've got the report in front of us, it's good that we can review them tonight. So it's not necessarily the Cabinet members that have decided to review these, because I know the Cabinet members are quite interested in health and safety as well.
Well, I agree.
And as I've said with animal welfare, it's something our group's taking up quite passionately. So it's just something to go away at, and it might be a reallocation of resources and put something on the back burner. It's not necessarily that the Cabinet's not interested in these issues. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just a quick one. I've just noticed in here it says on hold promote opening of cafe, bistro to residents of Primrose Gardens. I'm presuming that's going to be complete after the end of this month because we now have an occupant in there.
Sorry, on what page was that?
Sorry, it was page 27.
Yes, no, that should. There's a couple that will probably have moved since this report has been done. So I think just going back to the previous point, I think what we can do is go back to those services and get an update for the committee, just to find out where those are. We are moving into the Q2 reporting. So by the end of next week, we have asked for updates from all the services around the current business plan delivery. So with that, we're at the right time to be able to ask those questions. So I appreciate the sort of context to that, and we can take that back and we'll make sure we actually come back to this committee.
Yes, Rob.
Thank you, Chair. Checking up from that, the statement says opening it up to residents. I presume this cafe is going to be open to the general public as well, isn't it?
That's the question I don't know the answer to, so I'll probably have to just check that with Mark in terms of the...
Because I was just wondering whether there's a difference. Is it going to be open to the members of the public, but not to residents, you know?
That's what I will just need to clarify for you, because we don't know the detail of each of these projects, but we can certainly look at that, whether there's a distinction between resident and the people that live there as well, so general public and residents. So certainly we'll come back to you with that answer. We can get that fairly sharpish.
Any further questions? Yes, Michelle.
I've got some concerns on page 29 under communities where you've not started some projects, namely the occupational therapy presence. Certainly within my ward, this is a service to be cried out for. Can you tell me when we're likely to be starting it?
No, thank you for that one. So yes, we'll have to come back because it does sit with the directorates. So we'll make a sort of come back to you by the end of this week, or it could be early next week if we need to get hold of the communities team. But yes, we'll make sure that is highlighted back to the team that obviously this committee is wanting an answer. So yeah, we can do that.
Any further questions? Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, it's just another comment. It's just on what Councillor Neville touched on, which is the page. Yes, it's page 3. The flood defence work to the River Chor in Astley Park. I'm a ward councillor for North West Ward, and this does need sorting as soon as possible, as we don't want to let it happen again.
certainly
further
take that one
questions?
back, yeah. River Chaw
Sorry.
on the flood defences, yeah.
Any further questions? Well, thank you for that. Can you, when you see Victoria, just mention that we were a little concerned about quite a lot of the projects being on hold. And hopefully, by the time we see the next, when we see this report next time, also these will be acted upon.
Yes, absolutely. And I think what we're doing as a team is having more regular one-to-ones with the service leads
Yes, yeah.
in order to get a little bit more detail around what are happening with these projects.
Yeah.
We've put in a new regime of how we sort of monitor the business plans. We're on the first kind of round of that. So it is something that we're building, those relationships, because obviously we rely on those services providers with the information, particularly with the level of projects that are there. So absolutely, we can bring those back, and I can assure you that as a team we do challenge on some of these things as we move through the discussions, and that's what my sort of officers will be doing. So the updates that have been mentioned tonight will come back to the committee, but also respond to the individual members, so that we can get those answers to you as fast as possible. And then there will be the latest update that we collate at the end of Q2, so we'll have a full picture of where the business plan delivery is up to.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, if there's no further questions, can I thank Howard and the new gentleman there for attending this evening, and thank you all, and a safe journey home.